For too many of us, our primary health care comes in emergency rooms. Instead of preventive care, we're in catastrophic care. It would be better for the entire society if our community and all those who are the uninsured were to become the insured.
For us, on many plantations, health care was attended to by veterinarians, not by physicians. So there's been a long, deep distrust of health and the care of our people.
My name is Alfred Babington Johnson. I'm the president of the StairStep Foundation. As the Affordable Care Act rolled out and MNsure came to existence, we were delighted to be a part of the outreach and education effort to have more people, particularly African Americans, become insured. We recognized that some of the reasons for lack of insurance were not just the fact that there was lack of access, but there were also some cultural and historic reasons. To engage this discussion, we created a documentary called Discovered Truth, in which we talked about the historical disconnects. We also talked about the parallel resiliency of the African American economic activities over time. And we celebrated the fact that the first African American president, Barack Obama, actually brought forward the Affordable Care Act. We had good success in the first round of outreach and education, but a year after the Affordable Care Act has been in place, there's still far too many of us that are uninsured. Particularly, we're concerned about a group that I call the immortals and others refer to as the millennials, young people from 18 to 34 who for one reason or another put off the decision to get health insurance. Tonight, we've convened a group of thought leaders, a cross-section of artists and activists and business people and entrepreneurs who can watch Discovered Truth and can then share their thoughts with us. We're looking forward to this, and we are delighted on tonight to have as a moderator for this discussion a hip-hop artist, a performing artist, a law student, an entrepreneur. We want now to introduce to you Mr. Bankole.
My brothers and sisters, it's good to have y'all here. Warm and heartfelt introduction I think certainly resonates with the speaker. We all just viewed a documentary that, you know, as was stated, was a rough, and still I think the gems in there were maybe sharp enough that they caught your eye, my eye, and so hopefully now we can sort of have an open flow discussion. So transitioning into, I guess, specific questions or comments, having just watched Discovered Truth, is there anything new that you learned or anything that you gained insight on and perhaps hadn't had a grasp of or a knowledge of before?
How you doing? My name is Justin. First, I want to say thank you for putting your energies towards, highlighting some of the community efforts or community efforts that are lacking in this community. But overall, I thought the video was great. I think one of the more important things that took away from it was the actual cooperative developments. I think that was an important piece, and especially nowadays with technologies, I think that's something that we could really benefit from as far as the community, working together and using these cooperatives to really make sure everybody is benefiting from some of the development going on.
We need to have a discussion, and even our elders actually have a better understanding of the health stuff and the reason why we doubt it, like I said, about Tuskegee and all that. But there's still a generational dialogue because we're still in these nursing homes and still going to have to deal with folks on a generational level.
I think that's a great point. Certainly something that is relevant and necessary. I guess to those comments point, the video started off where it did, but also, as James first talked about, transitioned into slavery aspect, which is something certainly that's not ever really discussed or talked about, and I think it's a very vital piece to how we all got anywhere. As we were having a conversation earlier, and someone was asking the difference between like Jamaicans and Africans, and it was like, well, how do you think they got to Jamaica? It was all this this journey, and certainly slavery inspired or spurned that. As the documentary talked about the health disparities and deficits that arose out of that transition from slavery and emancipation, how did that impact you? Were there any thoughts or feelings that inspired?
How you doing? I'm Ace. Everybody can hear me all right? I thought it was an interesting piece as far as the outlook and how our health inequities kind of grew out of slavery. I do think that it's important to acknowledge that. I think that we also too have to recognize that we're in 2014, and though there are certain cultural gaps as far as our own cooperative education and understanding of where our dollar is spent, and so we may spend our money in the emergency room as opposed to getting preventive care, having a regular physician. So that I think that really speaks to more of the community aspect of not even having a regular physician. So other communities, they know their doctor, they know their family doctor. At some point we had that. So I do think that though slavery was important, I think that at some points we did kind of overcome that gap. And so I think in the 40s and 50s there were like black doctors, there were black communities that supported the black dentists. So I think there was a point we overcame that kind of slavery gap, but at some point obviously we lost it in the modern 60s, 70s, and 80s. So I think that would be my take on the slavery question there.
Not to cut anybody else off, but I think that's a beautiful segue as he talked about the institutions. I think that's something that most people are not privy to, and to me it's like it only makes common sense. The institutions of a community are then the funneling and funding and solution-based and think tank sources for that community. When you have a community operating plugged into the disparities that are present, then you have these black insurance companies and whatever else, and you think it makes sense because you just came out of a period where you were viewed as not even human or subhuman, and there was slavery, and now you're quote unquote free. But how are you really free if you can't be afforded the services or the coverage or the accommodations that you need to survive? So in order to realizing that was the truth, and everyone in essence is standing at the same closed door, like, what are we gonna do about food? Then we had to create our own food places. And as it talked about in the documentary, these institutions, of course they thrived, right? Because as much as they call us a minority or something like that, we are the number, amongst ourselves, amongst our issues. And so us having these institutions and our monies going into them, as much as we're told we can't succeed or we can't do this, it automatically succeeds because we make everything else succeed.
Yeah, so I just want to jump back in there, and I think that we also keep in mind in 2014, like a huge percentage of the health insurance business is done through group coverage. So not so much is it that we're lacking on the opportunity to get health care, is that we're not necessarily even taking place in the economic structure that supports health care. So people have a regular job that's taken care of by their health care is taken care of by their job situation. So probably 80%, or I don't know specific numbers, but a huge percentage of the book of business of these healthcare companies is done by group coverage. So we're not participating in that. So I think, I don't know. So I don't necessarily think that slavery is why we're not. The healthcare slavery aspect is definitely a root cause, but I don't think that at this point why we're not getting good healthcare is because most of us don't have jobs that are probably giving us healthcare.
So as far as us, as I look at this and we think about this need, this hunger, this lack of whatever we have, and certainly there's a space in there of we don't have anything we can just order that delivers to us, right? I remember calling was it Pizza Hut? I grew up over in North. I called Pizza Hut, like, yeah, I'm trying to get a pizza. There's like, we don't deliver there. I'm like, no. This is I'm up the street. I'm on Fremont. I think the joint was on like 31st and Lowry. I'm on 29th and Fremont. Like, I'm 3 blocks from you, bro. Like, I'm definitely in your area. He's like, yeah, we don't deliver there though. I've seen so many things. You talk about the blacklist. I just came back from D.C. They're talking about with the Ebola outbreak and the travel restrictions and whatever else. And we know that's about color. I think Keith Ellison, one of our state representatives, was one of 3 Democrats that spoke out saying, baloney, basically malarkey, because it's like the same people speaking the same coded language, right? I don't have to say the N-word or something like that. I could say, let's be more American. I don't have to say, hey, man, help me pay for my car. I say, we should really fund carpools or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I think the answer, to not get onto a soapbox rant, is us creating our own institutions. Clearly, we see some that are successful. Anything that's consumer staples, that you've got to have or is a basic need, if they're mandating health insurance and they're going to tax us anyway, then in my mind, we should be creating our own health insurance companies. We saw it worked. You pretty much get a bank. Well, you don't think they probably let us get banks outright anyways, right? They're going to come up with all kind of red flags, but maybe we can finagle to at least having that institution which cycles money and then supports ourselves. On the documentary, talked about Obama and showed about Obama and his journey, and it tied into how he was able to achieve this something that future presidents had not been able to. How do we feel about that? Like, does that really matter? Is Obama being the guy that got health insurance, is that like, obviously as you get older, you brag about different things like, man, I just got this new snowblower, you know what I mean? Like, it's off the chain. When you were younger, it was like the shoes or something else. As we're older now, is that a dropping point? Or if you get into a altercation or a conversation with someone of a different ethnicity, is it like, but Obama passed health care? Is that a dropping point, or is that sort of irrelevant?
I don't think anything's an accident. I think it's a very sort of divine symbolic representation of a environment that has constantly sort of propelled the African American community, call it the spirit, if you will. And in that, I really honestly believe that he's not Superman. He ain't here to save the whole situation, but I think it's at least, at bare minimum, a great symbolic representation in a very long line of experiences, for the African American community, where we can kind of look at this and be sort of recharged and remembering, like what the documentary was saying, like after slavery, it was all about our sort of own independence and creating our own institutions and creating these environments for ourselves. And so I think that with Obama being kind of that person that signed the pen on it, the symbolic representation is that it opened that space up nationally for the African American community and just people of color in general to be able to say, hey, there's space there now. But back to that disconnection, great, there's space, but how can we access? What is the process of accessing that?
Hello, my name is Ray. Totally agree. I ditto his sentiments totally. I think the symbolic component is there. Definitely, I think years from now, we'll look back and say that history was made, but there's still a significant amount of work that needs to be done. I mean, it does not stop here. I think we touched base on a significant amount of things earlier as we talked about the trust, the disconnect, and I think more or less the education component. It's one thing to know that, I have access to this healthcare, but at the same time, we've been psychologically conditioned to think that, I go to the doctor if I hear about cancer, I'm sitting there sick and my stomach is killing me, I may have stage level 4 cancer, therefore I want to run out and run to the doctor. But what about that preventative component? That is something that we're still not up to par on, and how do we take those steps so therefore we're not at a point where we have the cancer? I think lastly, too, is just, if the education is there, the history is there, and even if we build that bridge as well too, it has to be that willingness, and that's something that's still missing, the willingness to go out and want to capture it, that willingness to want to go after the connections and the relationships that we have, even with the corporate organizations that already exist. How do we build that, and what is the willingness there on our end in order to make it happen?
I like both of those commentaries. I was thinking up here myself that certainly we need to reemphasize the notion that, we had to work independently from the institution as we transitioned out of slavery, but the answer to that independent solution was a cooperative working, and everyone understood this only works remotely. We can only all have our own separate houses and whatever else if we all got our insurance company and our gas stations and whatnot. Please, madam, you have the floor.
I think one of the questions you had really hit the nail on the head, and that was, well, I need to know more, and now it's a matter of, well, how do you know more, or how do you get that information, or how do you get that knowledge? And that means that when you have questions of access, okay, if questions of access are being answered and access is now there, then you have to answer questions of inequity, because it's not about equality. You have equality in access. You have inequity in that you don't have culturally and linguistically competent services that are being provided. So if you have a population who is best served by getting their information via hip hop or via rap or via a teacher in a classroom or via a book or what have you, then it's about making sure that that education is being provided and is reachable to those communities. When you're working with kids and you know that, okay, the best way for me to reach them is through social media, or that it's coming through friends or loved ones, then we have to make sure that their friends and loved ones are equipped and are educated so that that knowledge can spread.
You know, I think that's a great point, and definitely supplements and solidifies, you know, what we're saying. If it's going to happen for us and to reach us, we're going to have to be in control of it. And I think hopefully what the urging trend or theme is then, okay, well, now what are we going to do? Certainly, you know, this is our first maybe meeting of this collective, right? For me, even though I used to be attending meetings if there was food, right? It's like, oh, they got food? Like, what time is it? Okay, I can slide through there. At this point, I've realized that perhaps that is a distraction, you know what I'm saying? Because just everybody's got food. So now you just had a bunch of meetings, you know, not doing nothing. So to me, certainly we've come together, we've had good food, and now we're talking. Now what? Is anyone about doing? I've certainly, knowing this, even this was leading up, but just my feelings have been like hollering at people like, all right, how can we get our own insurance companies then? Like, obviously the point of this isn't to go bring the money somewhere else. The point of this isn't to pull all our money in a pot and let's go give it to somebody outside of the circle. The point is to how do we flip this pot for ourselves, and certainly to do something it takes people taking initiative. So is anyone that feels an inspired initiative or a doing or an ask that is relevant to this?
Hi, I'm Tyler Daniel, and I'm just glad. I just want to, thank everybody for, this. It's inspired me a lot, and correct me if I'm wrong. I've been listening to everybody, and I think the important thing of the important message of this meeting is that the knowledge is the power, and how we get that knowledge is there's many different avenues, many different opinions. But the good thing that, and I think the first step is, having discussions like this, having films like this, talking about the hip hop community, talking about the differences that we have and the different avenues that are available to us. And now this has inspired me. My family's been in the healthcare business for some years now. A lot of the things that I've noticed is just the lack of knowledge. I have a friend whose mother had MS and just had no idea what a PCA was. Her own family members was helping her take showers and baths and whatnot would clog up their schedules all day. So the fact that, that we're all getting together and we're discussing these things is like a first step, and that's what is inspiring me. I may not know the right answer and the right way to go in this political party or this political stance or different views that we have in hip hop, because it's all different views and opinions. But I do know one thing, that the fact that we're discussing and we're taking that first step to the actual healthcare awareness, and I think that's what's very important and very vital. And I think that's what, just the symbolic representation of Obama speaking about healthcare at a time where black people like if George Bush would have talked about healthcare, they might not even have paid attention to the TV station. But for the simple fact that, there's a black man speaking about healthcare, there's a lot more people that are concerned about healthcare and wondering like, okay, well, what do I qualify for? So just the overall fact of awareness is what I feel like is important, and it's the speaking, it's getting together as a community, it's the direct marketing and whatnot. And I feel that that's what is missing in our community. It's just the lack of awareness of the healthcare companies and the insurance companies. I mean, I received, when this whole Universal Health Care Act was signed, I applied for my healthcare insurance, and I got a big package in the mail, and it was 8 different healthcare insurance company. Each healthcare insurance company had a booklet that was this big, that it was a bunch of, gibberish, half I didn't understand, and half I could pick up. And I just thought to myself, like, what about the people that don't have the current knowledge that I had at the time to read this information, to know? I mean, I had to literally call some family members of mine and advisors of mine and say, which insurance company do you think I should choose? What's better for my demographic or my location where I live or whatnot? What are some of the disadvantages and advantages of this, each insurance company? So just what I take from this meeting is that it's just the knowledge, and it's the knowledge and getting it out there, as she stated, in different channels, different ways, different communities. Just the fact that we're touching it is gonna be like the first step, I think, from my personal perspective.
I appreciate that. I believe I agree with you 100%. And to just put the other piece of the bread on that, it's certainly us. First of all, I meant to say, did everyone read the form that you signed before you came in here? Right. So what if I told you that one of the clauses was in there was that, you know, by attending this, by taking the food as consideration, and certainly if you had peach cobbler, then you're now responsible for being an active participant in whatever comes out of this space as far as what we're going to do to address this for our community. Now, it does not say that in the paper. I know I saw, you know, a couple people that I know read it, so they know that's not in there. But I guess in me playing a role in, I guess, who came here, my thoughts were selfishly, well, look, let's get enough people in the room from a strong position. And to me, I'm not an institution guy, right? I'm a don't wear my seatbelt, you know, cowboy boots on the north side, or a black dude in North Dakota, whichever way you want to go with it. So I'm about our own thing. As Streets Hat says, rebel life. You know, health is important, and health, mental and physical health is important to have financial health. Financial health helps have good mental and physical health as well. It certainly doesn't hurt. And so the one thing I will say is that as we come together and start disseminating this information via the young people and the young channels, then it's important that what we're disseminating is something we still know we can trust. We're not going to turn them over to a package that we haven't read, or a company that maybe even can modify what they're saying and still doesn't care about us. Let's be in the package that we're handing them to them and saying, hey, look, you probably never heard about healthcare or health coverage or nothing like that. Let's have a conversation about it, and just know we got some people working in that can make sure you're good and give you what you need. So I appreciate all y'all coming through here tonight, and for eating the food and for sharing your thoughts. And I believe that, you know, as we call and cooperate, you know, we create this Black Wall Street. It doesn't have to be called that, or this black insurance company, wherever it's called. It doesn't have to be called that, as long as it caters to us and our needs. And it is something that we can now negotiate from a place of power and say, hey, we know we have needs, we know we have challenges, we're addressing those. If you want to talk to us as far as making some sort of financial gain or bringing a benefit, you have to talk to us on our terms. Otherwise, we're self-sufficient, and we don't need to have a conversation. So God bless all of you.
Hi, my name is Anna Mazig. I just finished law school at the University of Minnesota, and I'm a Bridge Fellow at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. I think in discovering the truth, one piece that was very much highlighted is the history that's there, and I think a lot of individuals, minorities specifically, who are in need of healthcare and healthcare coverage don't understand the history that's behind that, don't have a full understanding of how far we've come and how important it is for us to take that knowledge and make our own investment into our health. I think historically for women, healthcare was somebody telling us what was going to be done with our bodies, or someone else having the control. And by women in my age group being empowered to make choices for ourselves, it really highlights our independence, highlights our ability to make sound and educated decisions in terms of our health and our health care.
My name is George Shannon, and I'm a brand ambassador. And I came in tonight's event. I was asked by a friend to be here, my friend Zach. I really didn't know what to expect, but I did read through the email, and it was about health insurance and health care and how it affects the African American community. And after viewing the film, I learned a couple things about our past history in the slavery and disparities in health coverage for people of color like myself. And you know, it was just a bunch of information that I was able to digest tonight, and it was good comments from the panel or the guests here tonight, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself tonight. I've always thought it was important to have health coverage. This has kind of just reaffirmed that for me, so I think for other people who don't have health insurance, I do think it would be a benefit to them. It's all about the presentation at the end of the day. Like, people consume information and media different now than in previous years, especially the younger generation. So you're gonna have to make it visual, you're gonna have to make it audio, you're gonna have to make it appealing and entertaining so they can enjoy it and consume the information at the same time. But having full coverage, they need to know the information about that, and they do need to have opportunities to digest this information at some point in time.
Zachariah Isaiah Oluwabankole. I was the moderator for this evening. I thought Discover Truth was a powerful, inspiring documentary that not only touched on historical perspectives that are truths, but also touched on relevant issues that we're facing as a result of some of those disparities we transitioned from, and now this current state of affairs that we're in with Affordable Health Care Act being passed and health coverage being now available for all, and whether or not it is available or viewed as available for our community and for our generation and demographics, and how do we get to accessing and using that. So hopefully this inspires hopefully this discussion inspires conversation, and hopefully there's also some supplemental action that takes place with that to move us forward. And we certainly appreciate Stairstep Foundation, Alfred Babington Johnson, and TPT for providing the opportunity and the platform and the framework and the substance of what we consumed and inspired our discussion.